Dear ICCS members and friends, good afternoon and thank you for joining us for this webinar session organized in partnership with ICCS member Oxford. My name is Carola Capone and I'm the Marketing Executive at ICCS. Welcome to everyone once again. Today's webinar session will be focusing on Singapore immigration and fiscal policies updates for businesses. On the side of Oxford, we will have as speakers Salvatore Di Chiara, Head of Account Management, and Nicola Loiacono, Senior Administrator Account Manager. Before leaving the word to our speakers, I would just to remind everyone that at any point of the presentation, if you would like to ask any question to our speakers, just feel free to do so by typing in your question in the Q&A box below, and then we will be very happy to address those questions at the end of the presentation. Without any further ado, I shall now leave the word and the virtual word to Salvatore, who will start today's presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Carola, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Salvatore Di Chiara. I'm the head of the account management team at Oxford Singapore, and together with me, there's my colleague, Nicola. Welcome again for this webinar. Thanks for the Italian Chamber of Commerce to organize it. And today we're going to be talking about what are the latest updates on the Singapore immigration and fiscal policies for businesses in Singapore. Before starting our presentation, let's have a quick look at the agenda for today. We're going to be looking at what are the new requirements for entry approvals and immigration guidelines in Singapore for businesses who want to relocate or their employees in Singapore, or for employees who want to come back into Singapore. And then Nicola will take care of talking about the new government support measures for all businesses. And then we'll close our presentation, spending a couple of minutes of the new updates on the double taxation agreements between Singapore and Indonesia. For those of you who do not know our company, we are a corporate service provider. We help companies to set up businesses in Asia, and then we help with all the compliance, accounting, tax, and HR matters. Without further ado, thanks also to Carola for doing the housekeeping. As she said, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop the questions in the Q&A section, and we will leave a lot of time to answer all of your questions that I really hope will be plenty of them. So as you all know, and I think you all notice this, Singapore is changing a little bit their approach to this COVID-19 pandemic. We all notice that with the increase in the local and international vaccination rates, Singapore has shifted this approach from a zero cases policy, like other jurisdictions in Southeast Asia, to a different policy that is, we need to live, we need to cohabit with this virus as much as possible, because we need the economy to recover soon. By the same time, they need to take care of the health of the population in Singapore. And for this reason, and we will see it more in details in the next slides, from the 10th of August, even work pass holders coming from what they were considered high-risk countries, like Italy, for example, they will be able to go back and apply for entry approvals in Singapore. Of course, there are some requirements to be met, and one of it is that they must be fully vaccinated. What does this mean? It means that they need to have completed both doses of one of the authorized vaccine. In this instance, in Singapore, the two authorized vaccines are Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna. But we will also see in the next slide how the Singapore government is trying to accommodate for what is the mix of vaccination that has been done in some countries in Europe. Of course, when you will apply for your entry approval in Singapore, you will also need to show any proof of your vaccination, uploading the vaccination certificates online. Of course, there will be penalties for non-compliance that can result also in criminal charges. So, as I mentioned, let's now do a deep dive on what has changed on the 10th on the 10th of August, and then even on the 9th of September. Basically, as you know, as you can see on the right-hand side of this slide, we put a table that categorizes all countries in 4 different categories. As we knew, before August, only people coming from Hong Kong, Macau, and mainland China were allowed to enter Singapore, even if they were holding a work permit or a EP or a S-Pass. And this is something, I think it was a very strong approach chosen by the Singapore government. And I think all of us have friends or colleagues who had to stay outside of Singapore. They could not enter and come back home, even if they were holding a work permit. From the 9th of September, what has been introduced is that even employees coming from higher risk countries, so it means from category 3 and 4, and Italy falls within category 3, can be able to apply to come back in Singapore with an entry approval, doing a test 48 hours, a PCR test 48 hours before the departure. This is very important. This just changed because it used to be 72 hours before landing in Singapore. So this regulation just changed. Those who are coming for category 3 and category 4 country, they will need to serve a stay-home notice. However, we will see more in details in the next slide. If you're coming from category 3 country and you are fully vaccinated, you will also be able to enjoy, allow me to this term, the stay-home notice at your own place. You will not have to serve the quarantine in a dedicated facilities if some of the conditions are met. To keep our presentation short and to then leave as much time as possible to the Q&A section, I prepared this slide that focuses only on Italy, and where I want to show you what is the entire process that someone traveling from Italy has to follow in order to come back in Singapore. So the first thing to do is to do the entry approval application. This must be done via the corpus. So this can be done by the company, or it can be also outsourced to an employment agency. Once the application is done, during the application, you will need to give the details of your flight. So when are you expecting to land in Singapore? In this regard, we always advise our clients to book flexible tickets or to wait until the entry approval is actually approved before purchasing the flight for Singapore. It is very, very important that once the application is approved, it is not possible to change it. So if you want to change your date of arrival, we will need to submit a completely new application for it. This is something really important to keep in mind. Once the entry approval has been approved, we will also, during this process, you will also have to declare where you will serve the quarantine or the stay-home notice. And as I said before, there is this new possibility for people coming from Italy to serve a 14-day stay-home notice at their own place of residence. There are a couple of conditions that have to be met. First of all, the place of residence must be occupied only by the pass holder or his family or her family members. It means if you're flying with your fiancé, if you're flying with your husband, it is important that you are taking the same flight, that your travel plan is exactly the same, that you are arriving at the same time in Singapore, and that and only in this case you will be able to serve the quarantine or the stay-home notice together at home. Of course, you also have to be fully vaccinated. As I mentioned before, there's also a possibility for people who do not have 2 doses of Pfizer or 2 doses of Moderna, because we all know in Italy some of us were vaccinated with 2 different doses. It is still possible to arrive in Singapore. However, you will have to serve the 14-day stay-home notice and then take an additional serologic test to show to the Singapore government you actually have been vaccinated and that you are fully covered. Of course, during this period, we will also need, during the stay-home notice, we will also need to take a rapid test in Singapore during the day 3, day 7, and day 11 of your stay of notice. And of course, at the end of your 14 days, you will also need to take a PCR test. Please, if you have any question about this procedure, just feel free to send us a message. I want to conclude my part of the presentation talking about this new scheme, travel lane, that's just been introduced from the 8th of September. It's the vaccinated travel lane. Of course, this vaccinated travel lane is still not applicable to Italians or people traveling from Italy. It is only applicable for people traveling from Germany and Brunei. But I think it is really important because this pilot will set out the new guidelines for future vaccinated travel lanes, and that hopefully will also include Italy. So what does this vaccinated travel lane enable? Basically, you will, if you are staying in Germany, let me just talk about the German case and let me set aside Brunei for a minute. So if you are living in Germany and you have been in Germany for the last 21 days and you have been fully vaccinated, you will be able to apply online for this vaccinated travel pass that will, if approved, will allow you to come into Singapore even for tourism purposes without serving any quarantine or stay of notice in Singapore. Of course, it's a very important scheme. We really hope this will be extended also to other countries and not just Germany. Of course, there are some other conditions to be met. First of all, we clarified with the immigration authority that the vaccination certificates must be issued by the German authority. So it is not still clear, but it was not clear whether an EU certificate could be accepted. What the immigration authority in Singapore clarified to us is that the certificate must be issued by the German authority. And then the other important thing is that even to check that you're actually staying in Germany, once you're doing the application, you will also need to download the Trace Together app. Of course, you will also need to book one of the dedicated vaccinated travel free flight. And as I mentioned, once you're arriving in Singapore, of course, you will need to take additional tests during day 3 and day 7 in dedicated facility. However, you will be able to enjoy Singapore. You will be able to do also sightseeing without serving any quarantine. Again, if you have any question about this travel lane, please feel free to drop me a message. Let me now give the word to Nicola. We'll be talking about what is the Singapore government still doing to support companies that are still facing troubles during this COVID-19 pandemic. Nicola, over to you.
Thank you, Salvatore. So as mentioned in the introduction, the government has further supported businesses through the implementation of 2 new measures, the enhancement of the job support scheme and the new rent support scheme. All businesses have been entitled to the payout from 30th of June related to the job support scheme. Employers who have made mandatory CPF contribution for their local employees of the months for the months of January to March 2021 are indeed qualified to receive the payout. With this payout, more than 26.7 billion of job support scheme support have been disbursed since the introduction of the scheme at the United Budget in February 2020. Specifically, as you see in the table on the left part of the slide, according to the sector, businesses are entitled to different percentages. Employers in the aviation, airspace, and tourism sectors have received 50% support of their first 4,600 Singapore dollars of gross monthly wages paid in January, February, and March. Food services, retail, arts, entertainment, land support, built environment, marine, and offshore businesses instead receive 30% of their wages, All the other sectors got 10%. But the news is that on top of June payout, the job support scheme has been enhanced to support sectors that have been significantly affected by the safe management measures from the 16th of May to 31st of August. So sectors that have been significantly affected will receive 50% support for the period 16 May to 11 of July. Other sectors that were affected will receive 30%. Thereafter, this sector will continue to receive 10% support from the 12th of July until 25th, as you can see in the table on the right hand of the slide. The enhanced payout corresponding to wages paid for April to July will be disbursed this September. So some of them have been already disbursed, while the enhanced payout corresponding to wages paid in August will be disbursed in the next December. Another important element to take into consideration is that as job support schemes are intended to offset and protect local employees' wages, employers who put local employees on mandatory no-pay leave or retrench them will not be entitled to the enhanced job support scheme payouts. Since employers' CPF contributions are used to determine the amount of job support scheme payout, it is vital that employers contribute the right amount of CPF for their employers. Based on actual the CPF contribution, of course, needs to be based on the actual wages paid. And there are penalties if you don't comply with that. Other than having the job support scheme payouts denied, the offenders can be charged under Section 420 of the Penal Code. So they can face up to 10 years of imprisonment. And to verify that all the employees and all the employers are in line with these indications, a small number of employers will receive letters from IRAS asking them to conduct a self-review of their CPF contribution. In those cases, the June payouts will be withheld pending the self-review and verification by IRAS. The payout will be after that disbursed only after the completion of the review. So moving to the rent support scheme, this is the first time IRAS is providing rental support directly to the tenants without going through the landlords. The new payout mechanism allows tenants to receive rental cash payment from the government promptly and reduces compliance burden also for landlords. Over 38,400 tenants and owner-occupiers will receive more than 216 million worth of this support. What about the eligibility? The eligible entities are small and medium enterprises and no-profit organization with annual revenues of not exceeding 100 million, which are tenants or owner-occupiers of qualifying commercial properties. Tenants and owner-occupiers will be notified by post of their cash payout. Most of them will receive the cash payout automatically without needing to submit any application. So the same way of the job support scheme. Although the payout will not be disbursed automatically to tenants who only rent part of a property, or tenants who rent a mixed-use property, like, for example, shop house for both retail and residential use, and also to licensees. So these businesses need to submit an application to IRAS and provide supporting documents. The application are already open since 16th of August. So how will IRAS disburse this support? There will be two payouts. The first one will be equivalent to 0.5 months of the rent for the second half of May. And the disbursement has already begun from August 6th. The second payout instead will be a separate second cash payout in view of the tight and safe management measures from that will cover the period from 22nd July to 18th of August. The second cash payout of an additional 0.5 month of rent for the qualifying tenants, of course, will be dispersed starting from October. So the last topic that we would like to touch in this webinar is the enhancement of the DTA, of the double tax agreement between Singapore and Indonesia. The current DTA between the two countries came into force on the 25th January 1991. The two countries signed the updated agreement instead on 4th February last year, 2020. And as it has entered into force last July the 23rd, with the effective date the 1st January next year, 2022. Amongst other changes, this update lowers the withholding tax rates for royalties and branch profits and provide tax exemption in the source state for certain capital gains. It also incorporates internationally agreed standards to counter treaty abuse. The agreement will benefit businesses in both Singapore and Indonesia, as well as boost the bilateral trade and investment flows between the two countries. There are three main, as mentioned, there are three main updates. The first one is the lower withholding tax rates for royalties and branch profits, and probably the most important one. The new Article 12 reduces withholding tax for royalties from 15% to 10% in the case of use or the right to use of any copyright of literary, artistic, and scientific work, and to 8% in the case of using or the right to use industrial, commercial, or scientific equipment or the information concerning these fields. The other new article that has been introduced in this update and the specific case, the paragraph 6, regulates the after tax profits of the permanent establishment and in this case branches. It reduces the threshold of the tax applicable in the other state from 15% to 10%. The second update is the tax exemption in the source state for certain capital gains. The new Article 13 regulates gains from the alienation of any property other than immovable property, movable property forming part of the business property of the branch, shares deriving more than 50% of their value directly or indirectly from immovable property, and ships or aircraft operating international traffic. The article says that those gains shall be taxable only in the contracting state of which the alienator is a resident. Finally, the last main change is the removal of limitation of relief to treaty benefits. And this is the way to counter treaty abuses. The limitation of relief enshrined in Article 22 of the current Singapore-Indonesian DTA has been removed. Under the current DTA, person could only enjoy treaty benefits if the income is remitted to or received in the country of residence. In short, right now, Singapore tax residents could only benefit from the provisions of the treaty where such income is remitted to or received in Singapore. Instead, with now from 1st Jan 2022, with the removal of this article, Singapore tax resident investors would no longer be required to remit the income into Singapore to enjoy the treaty benefits, subject to the principal purpose test. Also, foreign sourced income that are not remitted to or received or deemed received in Singapore will now be subject to tax under Singapore domestic tax regime anymore. Okay, so this ends our presentation. We have prepared some FAQ, and after that, we will leave space to you for your questions and to reply your question. So the first questions is actually what Salvatore mentioned earlier. If I receive 2 doses of 2 different vaccines recognized by WHO, what happens? When you enter Singapore, you will be considered not fully vaccinated, although after your stay on notice, you will need to get a serology test at the public health preparedness clinic, and depending on the result, you will get the vaccinated status. The second question is, my employee has been approved for entering to Singapore under the work pass holder general lane. However, he or she is unable to enter Singapore on the date specified in the application, or anyway, I no longer wish to bring them in. What should I do? As Salvatore also mentioned, to bring your employee into Singapore another day, you will need to submit a new entry application for him or her to enter Singapore on another day. And for ICA to consider a refund of the entry charges for the previous application, you will need to submit a request, a separate request to cancel the entry approval and require the refund. The last question on the first topic we discussed is why am I unable to access the Safe Travel portal despite having a core pass? So from 11 of April 2021, this year, the login process for core pass has been changed to first verify your identity via SingPass before you can actually proceed to access and transact with government digital services. And for foreign user, you would have received an email about your pre-registered SingPass account. Instead, the newly created SingPass account has been linked to your existing CorePass account automatically. Next dice, please. Okay. Another question is, if I'm a tenant, my landlord had fully partially waived my rent, and I'm still allowed to keep the cash payout? So the answer is yes. Tenants are still allowed to keep the cash payout from the rental support scheme, even if their landlords have provided a rental waiver. Will my firm be able to claim full tax deduction on the wages which are co-funded by the job support scheme payouts? The answer is also here, yes. You're allowed to claim full tax deduction on the gross wages paid to your employees, notwithstanding that such wage expenses are funded out of the job support scheme payouts. If you pass on the JSS payouts in the form of additional wages or fringe benefits to your employee, then such additional wages are taxable employment income in the hands of your employee. So when they will declare their taxes and submit the RTA, we will need, or you will need to declare it. You may claim tax deduction on the additional wages or fringe benefits paid, subject though to existing income tax rules. So the last question that we want to propose you is, if I'm a Singapore tax resident investor, after the amendment in the Article 22 of the DTA, are foreign source income now remitting into Singapore subject to tax under Singapore's domestic tax regime? As we mentioned earlier, the answer is no. because foreign source income that are not remitted into, received, or deemed received in Singapore will not be subject to tax under Singapore domestic tax regime anymore. So with the updated DTA, the investor will no longer be required to remit the income into Singapore to enjoy the benefits.
Thanks, Nicola, for going through this FAQ. Of course, these are all questions we are receiving from our clients. We thought they were relevant for the presentation, but as I mentioned, please, and I saw there are already a couple of questions, feel free to drop us a message if you have any doubts or you want to clarify anything.
Yes, Salvatore, actually there are two questions that I think are quite similar. Because there was also one person writing a question in the chat. I don't know if you saw it. So there's a person asking, I'm a resident in Italy, fully vaccinated with Pfizer. Could I book the BTST in 21 days in Germany before departure? We were discussing about this before.
Yes, thanks, Giovanni, for this question. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I'm currently in Germany. So I'm currently in Frankfurt because I wanted to exploit the vaccinated travel lane. Yeah, the answer is yes and no, in the sense that if we read the requirements, you have to be, of course, for 21 days in Germany. And this is very important because, as I mentioned before, you will need to download the Trace Together app for the Singapore government. We do not know if they are tracing the movements even in Germany, but I'm assuming, or it's quite likely that they would do it. So it is, first of all, it's important that if you're planning to apply for the vaccinated travel pass, you need to be in Germany for 21 consecutive days before your departure for Singapore. The second condition, and that's a bit blurry, is that if you read the condition stated out by the government, they say you need to have a vaccination certificate issued by the country or region from where you are departing. We actually clarified this point with the immigration authority, and they explicitly said black and white that the vaccination certificate has to be issued by the German authority. I mean, if you have done the procedure, you will have to scan the QR code of basically what in Italy is the green pass. We still have we did not try whether the system recognizes it, honestly, but I'm assuming they do. And I would not take on this risk after the ICA clarified that the vaccination has to be issued by the German authority or Singapore, of course. I hope this answers your question.
And I would like also to link this question to another one which is related to Germany as well, asking, does this green lane with Germany work only for people resident in Germany or also tourists who stay there for 21 days?
It's the same question.
Right?
It's related to those questions. There is no any reference to the fact that you need to be a resident in Germany in the ICA guidelines. So I personally thought I could take advantage of this vaccinated travel lane as well. However, the last clarification from ICA seems to slam the door on this possibility for people who actually did not receive the vaccination in Germany.
Okay.
I see there is another question from Pierre. What about PR? Honestly, PR, they've always had a preferential lane to go back into Singapore if we compare it to EP holder or any other pass holder. Of course, if you are if you stayed for at least 21 days in one of the category 2, 3, and 4, so for example in Italy, you are absolutely allowed to back into Singapore. You do not need to seek for the approval to go back, and you will be able to serve your stay home notice at your place of accommodation in Singapore. So you will not have to serve the quarantine in a dedicated facility. And another main advantage for PR is that if you're traveling with children below 12 years old, that presumably they are not vaccinated, if you are a PR, they can still serve the stay-home notice at the same place with you. Unfortunately, this is not the case for pass holders. The last question is, how about new EP coming to Singapore? Did you hear if it is harder to get your employees in? That's always a tricky question to answer. Of course, there are no changes apart from the salary increment that was announced last year. The minimum salary is now 4,500 Singapore dollar. It was increased from the 3,900 previously in the MOM requirements. However, we all know that these are only minimum legal salary, and if you want to apply for an EP, even for an entry-level position, you need to consider something around 6.5 to 7,000 Singapore dollar. Of course, EP are not related to any quota, at least officially, like S passes. However, in our experience, it is we are experiencing a little bit longer time and a little to receive a response for MOM, and we are also always in almost 90% of the cases receiving requests for additional information. This means support letter, of course, of why you want to hire your employees. We are receiving, they want to see any contract that you signed in Singapore. So the answer to your question is, of course, it's a bit more difficult than it used to be. However, it's not impossible. And if I can mention to you one peculiar reason that the MOM is now giving for companies applying for employment pass, for example, for not accepting it immediately, and that's something really weird, is that they are not accepting application with the reason that the salary offered to the employee is too high. That's something that goes against all of the everything that we learned in the previous years, because of course you always can go with the rule of thumb that the higher the salary, the better to obtain an employment pass. However, they want to see that there is consistency with the salary you're currently getting and the salary you're currently being offered. So this, of course, adds an additional layer of complexity with the application, and so you should also always seek the advice, I believe, on employment agency also on some of this aspect, because if you are offering a salary that's too high compared to the qualification of the person and compared to the previous salary, the MOM will just reject it. It is one of the toughest reason to appeal, rejection reason to appeal in this case, because you need to actually explain why you're offering this salary. You can't just say the Singapore cost of life is double the cost of Italy. So it's becoming a bit tricky.
Thank you, Salvatore. Thank you for raising this point, because I think it was quite delicate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other question?
At the moment, I don't see any other questions. Just give a couple.
Yeah, let's just wait a few minutes.
Yes. Otherwise, I think your presentation was quite extensive, and then all the, let's say, more sensitive questions have been asked. So I don't think.
While we are waiting for some question, of course, you can find our contact details in the slide. So you can find my email address as well as Nicola. Please, if you are shy to ask question now, feel free just to drop us an email. We will try to answer as soon as possible.
You can also reach to us directly, and then we can put you in contact with them with no problem. And of course, remember that at the end of the webinar, we were going to upload the recording on our website, as well as the PPTs.
Correct.
All right, I don't think there are any more questions. So I think we can end our discussion here. Thank you, Salvatore and Nicola, once again for being with us and giving such useful insight about this actual situation. And I hope to collaborate much more in the future and maybe to see each other in a physical events, who knows? Finally.
Yes.
Hopefully soon.
Yes, hopefully soon. All right, thank you anyway, everybody, once again. And
Thank you, everyone.
let's keep
Thank you,
engaging with
everyone.
us for the next events. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.